Mr. President, I want to thank the senator from New Hampshire for her support and continued effort to get rid of this wasteful, pork barrel, outrageous program that has cost the taxpayers tens of millions of dollars, the CATFISH office alone about $20 million to date. And as the senator from New Hampshire pointed out, this could put the entire Trade Promotion Authority, the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, in jeopardy. So it's a lot more than just this catfish here. It has a lot to do with our international relations and the prospects of concluding or not concluding one of the most important trade agreements, arguably, of the 21st century, obviously. And I'm pleased to join my colleagues, Senator Ayotte, Isaacson, Kirk, Crapo, Risch, Casey, Reed, Peters, Wyden, Warner, Cantwell, and McCaskill in introducing this amendment, which has already been made pending, to the Trade Promotion Authority Act that would repeal a proposed catfish inspection program at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The amendment would end the waste of taxpayers' money pouring into the creation of a USDA catfish office, which is about $20 million to date. I would also save American farmers and livestock growers from potentially losing billions of dollars in lost market access to Asian nations. As the senator from New Hampshire pointed out, I've been fighting this catfish battle for a long time. I first tried to kill an old catfish labeling program in the 2002 Farm Bill. Later, during the Senate's debate on the 2012 Farm Bill, I offered a similar amendment to repeal this new catfish program, which was adopted by voice vote. But when the Senate took up the 2014 Farm Bill, after failing to pass it in 2012, I was blocked from having a vote by the Democratic manager, despite her assurances that my amendment would receive a vote. Now, I note my dear friend from Mississippi here. I know that there may be others who want to preserve this $14 to $20 million waste of the taxpayers' dollars. All I want is a vote. All I'm asking for is a vote, up or down vote, on whether we should continue to squander millions of taxpayers' dollars on a program that is not only duplicative, but endangers the entire Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which we are discussing today. American agriculture is the heart of our efforts to pass TPA, particularly as negotiators move closer to completing the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. TPA can put wind into the sails of the 12-nation TPP, which will promote hundreds of billions of dollars of American exports, including beef, pork, poultry, soy, wheat, vegetables, and dairy products. The TPP covers an area of the world that accounts for about 40% of global GDP and one-third of all trade. The TPP will strengthen our security relationship with countries such as Japan, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Australia, and provide a strategic counterweight to Chinese protectionist influence. So it's our responsibility to pass a trade promotion authority that signals to Asian trading partners that we're serious about free trade. Free trade is good for America. I am a representative of a state that is immeasurably benefited by the North American Free Trade Agreement. And by the way, many of the same interests and people that oppose that are opposing this now, i.e. Primarily the labor unions. And the purpose here, that means eliminating this catfish program, which is one of the most brazen and reckless protectionist programs that I have encountered in my time in the United States Senate. The purpose of the USDA Catfish Office is purportedly to make sure catfish is safe for human consumption. I'm all in favor of ensuring that American consumers enjoy wholesome catfish. The problem is the Food and Drug Administration already inspects all seafood, including catfish. The true purpose of the catfish program is to create a trade barrier to protect a small handful of catfish farmers in 2 or 3 southern states. Let's be clear about what this is all about. Protect catfish farmers in 2 or 3 southern states, and we are endangering the entire agreement here. That's not right, and it's not right for the American people. In classic Farm Bill politics, Southern catfish farmers worked up some specious talking points, which will probably be repeated here today, about how Americans need a whole new government agency to inspect catfish imports. As a result, USDA will soon hire and train roughly 95 catfish inspectors to work right alongside the FDA inspector doppelgangers in seafood processing plants across the nation. Experts say it could take as long as 5 to 7 years for foreign catfish exporters to duplicate USDA's new program, which would give Southern catfish farmers a lock on the American seafood market. Growing government isn't cheap. To date, the USDA has spent $20 million to set up the catfish office without inspecting a single catfish. I'm not making that up. Moving forward, the USDA estimates it will spend around $14 million a year once the program is operational. GAO has investigated this catfish office and warned Congress in 9 different reports. Don't we have that? In 9 different reports. 9 different reports, the GAO, which is probably clearly the most trusted organization here, 9 different reports. The catfish office should be repealed. It's wasteful and duplicate. The FDA already inspects seafood. It fragments our food inspection system. 9 different reports, and a quote, and one GAO report is simply titled, "Responsibility for Inspecting Catfish Should Not Be Assigned to USDA." The Government Accountability Office has repeatedly found that catfish inspectors are a phony issue and warned that implementing the USDA program might actually make food less safe for Americans by fragmenting seafood inspections across 2 federal agencies. Mr. President, here are a few GAO excerpts. May 2012. USDA uses outdated and limited information as its scientific basis for catfish inspection. The cost-effectiveness of the catfish inspection program is unclear because USDA would oversee a small fraction of all seafood imports, while FDA, using its enhanced authorities, could undertake oversight of all imported seafood. GAO in February 2013. Congress should consider repealing provisions of the Farm Bill that assigned USDA responsibility for examining and inspecting catfish. GAO in April 2014. We suggested that Congress consider repealing these provisions of the 2008 Farm Bill. However, the 2014 Farm Bill instead modified these provisions to require the Secretary of Agriculture to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Commissioner of FDA that would ensure that inspection of catfish conducted by the Food Safety Inspection Service and FDA are not duplicative. We maintain that such a MOU does not address the fundamental problem, which is the FSIS catfish program, if implemented, would result in duplication of activities and inefficient use of taxpayers' funds. Duplication would result in facilities that process both catfish and other seafood were inspected by both FSIS and FDA. Even if my colleagues don't care about ballooning government spending and taxpayer waste, then consider this risk the catfish program presents to jobs and agriculture exports from their home states to an area of the world that accounts for 40% of the world's GDP and 1/3 of its trade. 10 Asian Pacific nations have sent letters to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative warning that this USDA catfish office is hurting TPP negotiations. At least one nation, Vietnam, has threatened trade retaliation if the program comes online. American trade experts are equally outraged. In a legal opinion written by the former chief judge at the World Trade Organization, the chief judge at the World Trade Organization said, quote, "The United States would face a daunting challenge in defending the catfish rule. There was and still is no meaningful evidence that catfish, domestic or imported, posed a significant health hazard when Congress acted in 2008. The complete lack of scientific evidence to justify the catfish rule combines with substantial evidence of protectionist intent." He further notes that when it comes to creating the USDA catfish inspection program in the dead of night, using a Farm Bill conference report. That's interesting, my colleagues. In a Farm Bill conference report was how this whole thing came about. Congress shot first and asked questions later. Perhaps Mr. Baca's most poignant warning is, quote, if Congress continues to mandate the transfer of jurisdiction over catfish, it will not only be inviting a WTO challenge to the rule, it will be giving other nations an opening to enact copycat legislation which will disadvantage our exports. Moreover, if the United States somehow prevails in defending the catfish measure in a WTO case, it will truly be open season in the rest of the world for new restrictions on U.S. agriculture exports of all kinds. Mr. Baucus isn't alone in his assessment. The Wall Street Journal has covered this catfish debacle over the years. Many times, the Wall Street Journal has editorialized and reported on this. This past weekend, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal penned an editorial, quote, entitled, Congress's Catfish Trade Scam. It's the Wall Street Journal, lead editorial, Congress's Catfish Trade Scam. The U.S. slams a trade partner and raises prices for Americans. The U.S. slams a trade partner and raises prices for Americans. Senate Democrats dealt a blow at economic growth Tuesday by refusing advance trade, now Japan, Vietnam, etc. The problem dates back to 2002, when Congress barred Vietnamese exporters from marketing as catfish, an Asian cousin known as Pangasius with similar taste, texture, and whiskers. But that failed to curb American enthusiasm for the cheaper foreign creature, which is common in fish sticks and often called basa or swai on menus. So in 2003, Washington slapped tariffs on the Vietnamese fish, claiming they were dumped into the U.S. market at unfairly low prices. That didn't work either. So Mississippi Republican Tad Cochran slipped a provision into the 2008 Farm Bill to transfer regulatory responsibility over catfish, including Pangasius, to the U.S. Department of Agriculture from the Food and Drug Administration. The pretext was public health, but Pangasius posed no risk, and the USDA regulates meat and poultry, not fish. The real aim was to raise costs for Vietnamese exporters and drive them from the U.S. market. Thus was born one of Washington's most wasteful programs, which the Government Accountability Office has criticized 9 times and estimated to have cost over $30 million to start, plus $14 million a year to operate, as opposed to the $700,000 annual cost of the original inspection regime. That is, everything that's wrong about the food safety system, said former FDA food safety czar David Acheson recently. It's food politics. It's not public health. Pegasus imports continue for now as USDA sets up its expensive new office, with the fish passing cod and crab last year to become America's 6th most popular. Shrimp is first. Meanwhile, Vietnam has threatened to respond to a ban by demanding the right to retaliate against U.S. beef, soybeans, and other products as part of TPP negotiations, and suing at the World Trade Organization, where it would probably win. Most members of Congress understand the damage, but Mr. Cochran has used his seniority to block repeal. The latest effort at repeal, and sponsored by John McCAIN and 9 other Republicans and Democrats, could get a vote when the Senate reconsiders the trade promotion bill, then would have to go through the House. Ending catfish protectionism would be a sign that at least some in Washington are serious about free trade. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to include in the record the aforementioned Wall Street Journal editorial,
without objection,
as well as an article in the New York Times dated June 27, 2014, entitled U.S. Catfish Program Could Stymie Pacific Trade Pact, 10 Nations Say, including a letter by Jim Baucus dated May 14th, a letter May 13, 2015, from the National Taxpayers Union, Taxpayers for Common Sense, Taxpayer Protection Alliance, and Citizens Against Government Waste, all of them urging Congress to repeal the CATFISH program in TPA. A letter dated May 14, 2015 from the National Restaurant Association, and a letter dated April 22nd from the Vietnamese ambassador to the Senate Finance Committee.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the National Restaurant Association sends a letter. On behalf of the National Restaurant Association, I strongly urge you to support the bipartisan McCAIN-Shaheen CATFISH amendment to the Senate's pending trade-related legislation. As members of the food service industry, we are committed to food safety. However, this new program would provide no benefit. In fact, the USDA itself has stated that its food safety inspection service would not provide additional food safety protection. Finally, implementation of this program could strongly impact U.S. agricultural relations with key trading partners. The Taxpayers Protection Alliance, we support your efforts to repeal the program, restoring some measure of fiscal discipline, and we urge your colleagues in the Senate to do the same. Now, Mr. President, the parliamentary situation is that we have a number of pending amendments, and that probably it's very likely that a cloture motion will be filed. That, of course, would then mean that I would be not allowed to have this amendment. If we don't allow this amendment, I have to say that we are really, really showing a degree of contempt and arrogance for the taxpayers of America. I have watched this program and this incredible, I have seen $14 million wasted. I have seen an example of protectionism. I was told in the last agriculture bill on agriculture that I would receive a vote on my amendment. All I'm asking for is a straight up or down vote so we can save the taxpayers $14, $20, $30, $40 million on a program that is both wasteful and unneeded. I understand my colleagues from Mississippi and other southern states wanting to protect their catfish industry, which I have enjoyed many samples of over the years. I do not understand the rationale for continuing, particularly under conditions of sequestration, a program that costs the taxpayers unending millions of dollars per year. Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to demand a vote. All I'm asking is for an up or down vote on an amendment that is clearly relevant to the consideration of this legislation. Mr.